All right. Well, at first place, I really want to thank Margaret for taking her time to spend this hour with us. I cannot be happier because you are such an expert, and I saw you in so many rankings of best career coaches, and that's how we actually got acquainted with you. So thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So could you please share with us what's going to be the agenda of today's session and what you would like to share with people today?
Absolutely. So what we're going to look at today is, firstly, assume that people on the webinar are looking for work or will be looking for work at some stage this year. And I understand many of you are in HR or in recruitment. So a lot of examples used will be for that industry, but I will use many other examples. But what we look at today is how to actually improve your online networking skills, because you definitely shouldn't be just relying on job boards.
Bueno, venga, la última. Sorry.
So we look at how to improve your online networking skills, because you shouldn't just be relying on job boards when you look for a job. I will give an example of how to request an informational interview and why they are important. We'll look at how to identify your value proposition and quantify achievements on your CV. I will share a couple of HR recruitment CVs just because that's most of the audience, but they will be relevant to anyone. And also we look at how to prepare for job interviews quite briefly, because obviously we have half an hour today. Also what questions to ask at the end of the interview and how to close the interview. So that's the agenda for today.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So meanwhile, could you guys, everybody who is here listening to this amazing presentation, could you guys share whether you are a job seeker, a recruiter, an HR person, and we will be trying to, find some good examples specifically for you. So feel free to chat, to open the chat and share that with
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not in HR and recruitment, if you're in a different role, just put your name in the chat box. So not your name, just let me know what your job is or what your industry is, because even though the examples on the presentation are maybe more tailored towards HR and recruitment, I can, provide a lot of examples throughout the session. So
thank you so much. All right, so shall we kick it off?
Great. Okay, so welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. My name is Margaret Buj. I'm based in London. I am a talent acquisition manager and also interview coach with over 14 years of coaching and recruitment experience. In terms of my recruitment experience, I have recruited for technology and e-commerce companies of different sizes, some global organizations, some mid-sized organizations, and also startups. I'm also a qualified personal performance corporate and executive coach. And as an interview coach, I've helped over thousands of job seekers get hired in the last several years. And I've worked with people across all different countries and different sectors, public and private sectors. So, hopefully I can use a lot of examples today that can help you if you are looking for a job, because I'm not just using my coaching experience, but I'm also using my day-to-day recruitment experience. So firstly, how to improve your online networking skills and why it's important. One of the biggest mistakes I see that job seekers make is that they just rely on job boards when looking for a job. Maybe they will contact a couple of agencies, but they just really rely on job boards. Now, nothing wrong with using job boards. I actually got my last contract literally from applying on LinkedIn. So you can absolutely get a job, applying online. But unfortunately, a lot of the jobs, by the time you apply, the company will be already on the final interview stage or even at an offer stage. So if you just rely on that, if you're just one of the many hundreds of candidates applying for work, it will be more difficult to get noticed. So I feel it's very important that you network with people who have the position, who are in a position to introduce you to people. You're never asking strangers for a job, but it's a good idea to network with people in your industry, so you hopefully get, hear about opportunities as they become available. So what's important about networking? A lot of people think that they need to contact complete strangers and that's why they feel uncomfortable about networking. Now, you can absolutely contact strangers in target organizations that interest you. But really, your first port of call should be people that you either know, maybe some dormant contacts, maybe someone you worked with 10 years ago. It's always easier to contact someone that you have some sort of connection with. So your best contacts in general would be insiders in the organizations that interest you. So I would always recommend that you create a list of target companies that you would like to work for. Have a look on LinkedIn. Do you know of anyone within a company who you could have a chat with? Even if you don't have any any friends or colleagues who work there, maybe some of them, your colleagues, are connected to people who work for the organization. So in general, when you network, don't just ask complete strangers for a job, unless you've actually done some research, because it just puts too much pressure on people and most of them won't be able to offer you the job as such. So most people won't be able to help you directly, but they might be able to help you indirectly, for example, introducing you to someone or giving you some advice. So, people typically are willing to help. I mean, not everyone will come back to you, but, a lot of people will. So it's a good idea to create a list of target organizations and reach out to people to ask for an informational interview. And I will share a template of what you might want to do. So in general, always focus networking on the people you know before reaching out to strangers. It's just going to bring you better results. And don't think they have to be the people you know well. It could be someone you've met at an event 5 years ago. It could be it could be someone you worked with many years ago. It could be someone you met through work. But the more conversations you have, the quicker you will find the job. So in general, in networking, ask how they see the industry, what's going on, what their companies like to work for. You can of course ask if they know of any relevant openings, but don't just ask them straight for the job. And for the name of the decision makers who would hire someone like you, even if that person is not hiring at present. And also always ask after the conversation, is there anyone else that you think I should talk to? But in general, don't ask them to find you a job and don't ask for too much too soon, because sometimes I will receive emails from, complete strangers who haven't even bothered looking at my profile, and they want me to, look at their CV and tell them what I would change in their CV and introduce them to, I'm not going to introduce a complete stranger to my contact. So don't just ask, give first as well. So what to include in your email? So firstly, be personable and friendly, ask how they're doing. If you have met them in the past, remind your contacts how you know each other. So for example, I've been working in recruitment for 15 years now, it's good if you remind me as a job seeker that we were in contact when I worked, at specific companies. So I actually had a contact recently from someone, and, he was in contact with me 7 years ago when I was working at Expedia. I didn't remember that, of course, because I was dealing with so many candidates, but it was good the person reminded me. So remind them how you know each other, state what you're asking for, whether it's advice or recommendations, very concisely remind them of your background, and thank your contact in advance for the cooperation. So this is just an example of how you can ask for such an informational meeting. So I would have it something brief, prepare something brief, and you can say something like, I hope you're doing well and staying safe, something like that. I'm reaching out to you. You mentioned the reason. So maybe you were made redundant, maybe you're looking for your next opportunity, whatever the reason is, and I hope you might be able to help. So you can mention what industry you would like to work in, or the job you're looking for, and maybe you are specifically interested in that company that they are working for, and just ask them, would you be available to talk briefly over the phone or video? I would appreciate just 15 minutes of your time. And then you can just flatter them, like mention something on the profile that really interested you. Tell them that their insights and advice will be valuable, and just basically make sure that it's not a generic email, but it's something that you have created based on the research you've done on that person. And that's it. And even you can say something, I appreciate you busy, so if I could maybe even send you a few questions via email, if it's easier for some people, then that will be fine as well. But in general, the more informational meetings you have, the more you just hear of different opportunities that may not be advertised. So I would definitely recommend that you do that, apart from applying for jobs, apart from using recruitment agencies and using all the traditional channels. So how do you quantify your experience? And I will mention some examples of HR achievements, but really that section is super important. So most CVs I see, most resumes, and as you can imagine, I can see a lot of them. they lack the quantifiable achievement. So many CVs I see, there's loads of responsibilities, there's loads of responsible for or duties included, but sometimes I look at the CV and I actually can't tell how good the person is at the job just from looking at the CV. So why is it important? Unless you have some specific quantifiable achievements on your CV, I have no idea how successful you were at the job, which means that unless you have these quantifiable achievements, you're very unlikely to get an interview because you're just not going to stand out from others. So when you prepare to list your achievements, ask yourself about the time frame, scale, and the results. And obviously, you're not going to have all of that on your CV, but just when you prepare the example. So ask yourself about the time frame, so over what time frame did you work on the task? So maybe, hire 20, if you're a recruiter, hire 25 employees within customer success team within 3 months contract. Or how many times a week did you work on the task? Then the scale, maybe it was a specific budget. Maybe you carried out a marketing campaign and what was the budget? Or, maybe you manage campaigns of 10 clients in specific industries, or you manage a team of 5 HR people. So provide some numbers, provide some details. And ideally, you also want to have results. So have you done something that saved time, saved money, made money, just in general, try to quantify the results. A great feedback or a project completed on time would be a result as well, or how many people were affected by whatever initiative you were working on. So that's very important. And when you prepare your CV, when you send your application, when you prepare for an interview, answer the question posed by potential employers, like, how have you solved my problem? How can you improve my organization? And you want to outline how you've done this for current and past employer. So I would really remove all of the responsible for or duties included from your CV, and you want to quantify your achievements with measurable components wherever possible. I know it's not possible for every sentence on your CV. And also use action verbs to tell your story with impact. So instead of responsible for, say, managed, initiated, managed, initiated, led, and words like that. So here's also how you can do that, because many people think, I don't work in sales, so how can I quantify my achievements? If you work in sales, of course, it's easy. You can increase sales by 25%, but what if you don't? So there are 3 ways you can do that. Firstly, show how many. So for example, which CV would you pick? If that's a responsibility on a CV. Ensured compliance with filing of annual forms, or ensured compliance with the filing of 75 annual forms by 7 different company departments. So, at least it shows the person, the scale or the scope of the work. So you can show how many. You can show how much. So you can see examples. You can say, cut costs, or you actually mention how much you've cut the cost by. Or you can also show how often. So even if you're an admin assistant, instead of saying answered phones at the reception, you can mention that you've managed switchboard with 10 incoming lines, receiving and routing an average of 500 calls per day. So here are some just examples of achievements, and I'm not sure how many people on the call are in HR, but and if anyone emails me, I can send you some of these examples via email, so feel free to send me a message later. But the point is, you want to have something quantifiable, or if you can't quantify, at least use the action verbs. So for example here, these examples aren't maybe that quantifiable, but the person uses some action verbs, consolidated 2 HR functions, previously managed by several different departments, and now it's, 1, or drove transition from outdated HR system into a new platform, and, improved analysis reporting. So I guess you can't always quantify how much you've improved analysis by, but at least mention those actionable verbs, mention what actually happened. Or some examples here, again, you can see numbers, or you can at least see like tangible results. You wouldn't just say consulted with retailers. You actually mentioned what you achieved, right? Which was creating staffing models and recruiting strategies. So in general, you want some numbers, you want some percentages. Some examples in recruitment, provided interview training to 120 employees, or interviewed and screened 15, 20 candidates on a weekly basis, or saved company £10,000 per month for recruiting costs. Honestly, it doesn't matter what industry you are in, because you can do it in every single position. You can have examples in IT, when you've saved time or money, when you've streamlined procedures, in absolutely every single function. If anyone wants examples from different industries, feel free to send me a message. I can definitely send you some examples of quantifiable achievements. So here are a couple of good CV examples, and they are, mind you, more like related to HR, but actually, sorry, this one isn't. This is really the kind of format that I would recommend for a CV. You don't always need to mention a targeted job title, although it might be a good idea. But in general, you want to have a summary section and core competencies or skills section that's tailored to every job. So firstly, in your summary section, you really want to mention some specifics about your experience, right? So mention maybe what industries you've worked with, or some results you've achieved, or your main areas of expertise, and what are the keywords that are used on a job description, because these are the keywords you want to use in your summary section. Say in the core competency section, what are the specific, mostly hard skills mentioned on the job description? Because anyone can say they have good communication skills, but what are the hard skills mentioned on the job description? And I would add that to the core competency section. And then when you create your CV, and that doesn't matter what industry you're in, just have a look at that example. So for all the achievements you've asked, ask yourself a question: how do you know you've done a good job? And then describe what that good job looked like. Or another way is like, how have you saved money, made money, or streamlined the process, or positively contributed to the corporate culture? And be very specific. Or like, ask yourself, what feedback have you received from your boss? What were your colleagues happy about? Because these answers will help you discover what your unique talents are that prospective employers should know about. And as I mentioned, don't ever start with responsible for, duties included. Use the action verbs. A couple of examples here. So again, this is HR director, but as you can see, strong summary section. They mention what the unique selling point is. As you can see, a lot of the skills that they have in terms of the core competency section, and then a very very clear achievements in terms of numbers, like manage 135,000 budget. Now, it's not about the size. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you just need some numbers on your CV. I think that's just what one lesson from this presentation. You need to quantify your experience, and that's just second part. So again, very specific, very quantifiable. You can see all of the relevant keywords from the job description. Okay, so interview preparation. And are there any questions actually based on that? I can't see the screen, but if there are any questions, let me know.
Can I quickly actually ask you, Margaret? So I noticed that in the CVs, you go with work experience first. However, I know cases where education goes first.
So that's actually a good question. I would say for anyone with a lot of work experience, you would start with work experience primarily, because it's like, if you have 20 years of work experience, who cares where where your education was? If you only have, if you're a brand new graduate, if you only have 2 or 3 years of experience, of course you can start with your education. You can also start with your education if it's super impressive, maybe you had an MBA from Harvard, something like that. Yeah, I would totally put it on page 1, even if it was 20 years ago. But in general, work experience, in the UK, definitely counts for more than education. So I think there will be slightly different specifics in different countries. There's nothing wrong with necessarily putting education first, but if you are an experienced professional, you don't want to education take half of your page and then work experience to start on page 1. It really should start on your work experience section, or professional experience section should start on page 1. So at least as I said, there are slightly different specifics in different countries, but honestly, in most Western European countries, at least, you would put the work experience first. It's not wrong to put education first, but you want to grab the recruiter's attention or grab the hiring manager's attention with your most relevant experience. So if there's something about your education, like maybe you are working data science and you've just done a master's in data science, sure, absolutely put it on page 1. But if your education was 15, 20 years ago, I would just lead with your achievements, not with your education.
Less sense than it will.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, if you're a brand new graduate, of course, or even like a few years of experience, then mostly it makes sense. But it's not a bad thing to put education first. It's more about, can the recruiter or the hiring manager realize that you're suitable for the role from like a few seconds of looking at your CV? So like, you need to ask yourself, what is it that they see first? And is your education from 15 years ago really that important? If it is, sure, put it in, but most of the time it's not.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so interview preparation.
Медленно. Ну сколько? 400 сирена можно?
To be honest, like interview preparation, that could be a half-day topic, right? So obviously we're going to like, just give you some specific, some quick answers. But in general, you want to know your resume, your CV backwards, forwards, and every angle in between. So what do I mean by that? For every bullet point on your CV, like you really want to be able to explain, actually what I should say, for every bullet point on the job description, you should be able to back it up how you have done that similar task in your current role or in your previous positions. You also need to understand, like, different projects or different initiatives that you have worked on in your career. You should not just know the result of the achievements, but like what was the situation like before, what did you actually do and what was the result. So like really, you ideally want to have quantifiable achievements in every single position. Obviously the last few years are the most important. So if you have 20 years of experience, really focus mostly, the last 2-3 jobs, and you can have a lot less information or maybe just dates for your early positions. But really, employers are mostly interested in the last 10-15 years. Also, research the company, the position for which you are interviewing, and the interviewer. I actually have a video on YouTube on this exact topic. But in general, most candidates will do a company research, but they will do a very generic company research. So they will look at the website, and that's pretty much it. Ideally, you want to go to the interview having some information they don't expect you to have. So apart from looking at the website, don't just look at the About Me page, look at the products page, like what products are they launching, what are they saying about their services. Google them, what are the trade press saying about them, are there any articles written by the top executives. I would look at their social media. I would review the opinions on Glassdoor, because that can, obviously not all of them will be positive, but I would review opinions on Glassdoor because that can help you prepare some questions as well. I would look at their social media. Do they have presence on LinkedIn or Twitter, Facebook, whatever? What are they tweeting and posting? I would review that. Like, what's the tone of the company? Can you refer to something you've seen on social media and then ask about it in an interview? If you're applying for quite a senior position, I would definitely review all of the financial results. Look at their annual reports. Look at YouTube videos of the top executives. To be honest, you can do it for a role at every level, but especially the more senior you are. Say in the job description, like really read between the lines. What do you think? I appreciate that some job descriptions are really poorly written, but in general, what are the specific, what do you think, what problems would you need to solve looking at the job description? And ideally you want to be able to back up every single bullet point or every single requirement with how you have done something similar in your current or previous position. And also the interviewers. So I would always, Google the interviewers, look at the LinkedIn profile. Do you have anything in common? Maybe you have worked in the same school or, worked for a same company. I'm not saying that in itself will get you the job, and it shouldn't really. But is there anything in common? Like, is there anything that you can build rapport? So definitely do that. Now, prepare answers to the standard interview questions. So we'll do a little bit of that. But most interviews really are quite similar, right? Because they will ask you some of the standard questions, like, tell me about yourself and why do you want to work here, and what are you looking for in your next job? And then some of the competency-based questions, so examples of achievements or challenging situations or influencing or working to a deadline and all of that kind of stuff. So you really need to prepare in advance. And I think I'm stating the obvious, but I actually just booked a client for tomorrow and he hasn't done any preparation. He has an interview for a pretty senior position on Friday. I'm like, really, you have to do some preparation before our session, because it takes time. It takes time really to prepare examples, think which example you're going to use for what. And it's also very important you prepare some questions for the interviewer, and I will share at the end, what questions you can ask. So I think a lot of you will be aware with the STAR statements. So problem or situation or problem, action, results. It either stands for situation, task, action, result. That's really what it stands for. But whenever you prepare your examples, focus on the situation or the problem. Then talk about specific actions you took. Even if you worked as part of a team, make sure that you talk about what you did, not just what your team has done. mention the result, and if it's appropriate, mention what you've learned as well. So the the result ideally should be something quite tangible, right? So you've done something to save time, save money, you've improved the company's reputation, you got press coverage, you've streamlined the procedure, you've received, 80%, 90% satisfaction rating, like, whatever the specific result would be. So even if the interviewer doesn't tell you the interview will be competency-based, you still want to prepare those examples, because you still need to show the interviewer that you have the skills that they are looking for. So any interview, prepare some example of challenging situations, influencing, definitely achievements, because that will help you sell yourself a lot better. So just ask yourself, and that's not related to HR, these questions, but just in general, ask yourself before you send your CV or before your interview, what did you contribute to each of your jobs? Did you exceed sales quotas? Did you save or make the company money? Did you solve any kind of problems? Develop procedures, launch products, attract new customers, maybe you improve the quality of the product, or, implemented a new software. Like, what have you done, right? And did you do something that made the company more competitive? So these are the questions you should be asking yourself before the interview, and in fact, even before you send your CV for a specific job applications. So obviously that's a very big topic, interviewing, right? We only have half an hour today, but just in general, you want to be able to quantify your experience and back up your answers with, in fact, just actually going back to that. When you prepare the examples, use the STAR format, but in general, even with the general interview questions, like let's say they ask you, what can you bring to the role? Make sure that you back up your answers with examples. So for example, it's not enough to say that, I'm good with people, I have good organizational skills, and I have a lot of experience. I mean, how does it make you stand out from others? It doesn't really. So how can you quantify that? So I'll give you an example. I was working with a senior project manager, almost like a project director. And I've asked him, okay, what can you bring to the role in the mock interview? And he said something like, I've done it for a long time, and I'm good stakeholder management skills, and good stuff, but very generic, like doesn't make him stand out. But then when I've asked him questions, I found that he had 15 years of team management experience. He managed teams of between 5 to 25 people. The projects that he managed, the budget was between $2 and $50 million. I mean, that's what you need to mention, because clearly if you weren't a strong project manager, you wouldn't have been given a budget of $50 million to manage. So how can you quantify that? Like even if you're quite junior and you can say, I have good organizational skills. In my last job, I've assisted in organizing 7 events with up to 300 participants each. So quantify that, right? You can also talk about your specific, computer skills, just any kind of like hard skills. In general, if they ask a question, what can you bring to the role? I would mention some hard skills, and I would mention some interpersonal skills, but back them up with example. Don't just like list your qualities, because that's not going to make you stand out. So it's also very important that you ask some questions at the end. I remember a situation when one of the candidates was actually rejected after the interview because the hiring manager asked her, do you have any questions? She said, no, I know everything. And he was like, well, she didn't seem interested in the job. Like maybe she knew about the job, but what does she know about my expectations as a manager? So depending on what has been discussed with the interview, you will obviously need to vary the questions. But in general, you want to ask what would you expect me to achieve in the first few months? You can ask about the challenges of the department. Or what are you hoping this person, could solve? You can ask about the main challenges or priorities of the role. You can ask how your performance will be measured. You can ask about the company culture. Again, I would always review on Glassdoor just to see what the company is saying. Ask about the team you'll be working with. If you're going to manage a team, I would definitely ask about the direct reports, about the strengths and biggest challenges. So yeah, even just have 3 to 4 questions to ask at the end. It always makes a good impression. And then in terms of closing the interview, so you want to thank them for the time, your interest in the job, and if it hasn't been explained to you, ask what the next steps are, right? You want to understand how many interview stages they are, when you can expect to hear back, when are they looking to fill the position. And I think it's a really good idea to send a thank you email to reiterate your interest in the company. So I mean, I would just do it on the same day, maybe a few hours after the interview, or latest the next day, and just, thank them for organizing the interview, or thank them for the time. You also, emphasize that you're really interested in the role, and you just might want to reference parts of what has been discussed in an interview, just to demonstrate you have, good listening skills for each of these thank you notes. Not many people do that. Like, if you did a really bad interview, that's not going to help you clearly, but it can really help to make you stand out, because not many candidates will send a thank you note. So, okay, pretty much right on time. Half an hour now. Just very quickly, if you want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me. I'm primarily on LinkedIn. I have a lot of videos on YouTube. So feel free to, check out my YouTube. Send me an email if you have any questions about the presentation. Just, go to Margaret at interview-coach.co.uk. I have a lot of free stuff on my website as well. I mean, I have some paid online courses as well, but in general, I have quite a lot of information on my free resources page. So feel free to send me an email. I can direct you to some of the resources if you let me know what you're looking for. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty big network, over 26,000 people now. So, obviously the more people you connected to, the more access you get to people on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I've managed to do it in half an hour.
Margaret, this was great. Just a couple of words about Margaret and about her experience of a career coach. Everybody should, who is genuinely interested in career development, you guys should really consider keeping an eye on career consultants these days, because if you don't invest in your career coaching, in your career consultancy, you might not be able to keep up with the trends that there are on the market today. I mean, things change dramatically day after day, and if we don't keep up, someday we will just, wake up being absolutely unneeded as specialists. So
I think because of the fact, it's so competitive, like I was, I typically do recruitment and coaching at the same time. And there were times when I was just doing coaching. There were times when I was just doing recruitment. Well, actually, no, I always did recruitment and coaching for the last 15 years. But I have to say, it's so much more competitive now since the COVID. So when I started looking for the next contract, I have seen jobs where there were 900 applications.
Wow.
It's just insane. So how do you make yourself stand out? And honestly, all of these tips will definitely help, and I've also seen some career coaches saying online that, oh no, you don't even bother applying for jobs online, it's like all networking. I personally disagree, because I think you absolutely can get the job online. I mean, I'm the proof.
You are an example.
Applying.
Right.
But you just need to be able to tailor your CV. You need to be able to sell yourself, and you need to be able to really make your CV super relevant to the requirements of the role, because that's how you're going to get noticed.
Awesome. Margaret, this has been awesome, really. So many important things you mentioned, and such an important, range of information here in this presentation. Luckily, we have a recording, so we could read all of the questions and get prepared better. So there were some questions in the chat, and there is Eric MP, who wanted to actually ask you a question in person. Eric, do you think you could do it for us?
Yeah, hi. Eric Potters, international consultant based out of Chicago. I'm in the Midwest right now dealing with snow.
I know, I have a girlfriend in Chicago. She told me it hasn't stopped snowing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got 12 inches. I don't know how many meters that is, but my friends out in Pennsylvania got 32 inches. But my question relates to, I'm trying to figure out, a lot of people have video questions. What angle are you coming at as far as, I guess, your interaction or your relationship with VCV? I've got a lot of questions that I'd like to ask.
I don't really have, the thing is, we had some kind of, you asking about my relationship with the company?
Yeah, because I'm a consultant and I've been talking
with I don't work, we don't work together. It's just, we are professional contacts,
So it's just informational purposes?
Completely informational purposes. I don't get paid for it, and I've never worked for VCV, and neither do they work for me. So, we just had some professional.
Okay, so my question relates to the hospitality specifically. I have a lot of clients that I can introduce VCV's video concept to. And the idea would be, let's say, and I'm going to give this to you, Ani, the Kentucky Derby. They have thousands of people that come for this one day, and they hire people for like the Festival of Racing before and after the race, and it's a big thing in Louisville, Kentucky. So I can introduce Ani to the president and CEO and senior vice presidents, and she can close a big contract. So my question is, how does what you're showing relate to, I guess, VCV and video? And then what's your angle on the AI component of video resumes?
Sure. So, so it's a slightly different question because, if it's an event, if it's like a day event where you have, a massive amount of applicants and they do video interviews, it's slightly different. But in terms of how you answer questions, I work with a lot of people who have video interviews. Some of them are graduates, some of them, just apply for high volume positions. So my clients also include people who have to prepare their answers for the one-way video interview. I mean, sometimes it's just a normal video interview, like, Zoom interview, but often it's a one-way video interview. These are exactly the same principles because you still need to be able to answer the questions about how your experience is relevant to the role. So all the, the STAR format, the quantifying your achievements, that's exactly the same preparation, whether it's going to be a video interview or an interview with the hiring manager.
But the question relates to the AI technology because they're utilizing technology. I'm very well versed in intra and interpersonal communication. I went to a very high level, I guess, Midwestern Ivy League school, so I can read people. Like I can't read you on video, but the AI technology allows you to see honestly if a person is lying. To see if a person is telling the truth.
Ask VCV. I'm not an expert on AI technology at all. I'm an interviewer and a recruiter, so I don't think I'm best positioned to answer this question because that's not my area of expertise. I have clients who have to answer. I've taken part in some video interviews myself, but I wouldn't say that's my area of expertise.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Margaret is our partner today. She wanted to share some, experience regarding networking and modern, ways to improve your CV and be competitive on a job market. So speaking of our professional situations, I think it's a little bit out of this conversation. So shall we actually move to the next question and see something more related to the presentation? I think Gore was asking a question. So he asks you whether a video resume, the one that actually we have, I guess, does a video resume substitute a regular text CV or not? And what do you think about it?
You know what? I think it depends on the position. I personally don't think it substitutes because if I have a lot of applications, I don't have time to watch 50 video CVs whereas in a few seconds I can, I think they can work very well together. I see you have a text CV with a text CV or resume. I'm using CV because we use that in Europe, but US it's resume. So just for anyone who's confused, I'm talking about the same thing. So I think a video resume could work very well together with a traditional CV because you can have a more traditional resume where you have, your summary section is very clear, the date of your employment, but then you can also have a video component, have a link to your video. I think that makes it much more personal. So I think it's a great idea. Okay, would that replace normal? Ask most recruiters. I think most recruiters will tell you it's not going to replace a normal resume, and most applicant tracking systems are not adjusted to be accepting just video resume. But I think it could be a really lovely addition and just really get to know the candidate a little bit better when you have that video component. So I like the idea, but I don't think it's going to replace.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I think that also answers to Renata's question. She asked whether recruiters have time to watch videos or not. So I think that was
I think it depends on the role, because if you have, I think where videos could be useful, would I, as an example, right now, okay, I've only been working with this company for 3 weeks. I haven't had like a huge volume of applications, but I remember when I was working in recruitment and I would have, say 80 applications to review. I mean, would I have time to watch 80 videos? No, of course not. Whereas it's going to take me seconds to look at every CV, like sometimes it's extremely obvious within 3 seconds of looking at someone's CV that they're not suitable. So why would I waste my time watching the video, video CV? That's why I don't think it's going to replace it. But at the same time, if someone seems like a really good fit for the position, and then they answer a few questions via video, so you can actually get to know them and their kind of how they answer the questions, I think that could be a very nice addition. Mm-hmm. But that would be really more important for the candidates you're actually interested in, not for like any candidate who applies.
Yeah, for like a better understanding of what you're doing.
Exactly. So I like the video component, but personally I don't think it's going to replace it.
Yeah, all right.
It's easier because you also need to understand, I want to look at a quick glance, where is this person working? How many years of experience have they got? you can't do that in a CV, like, and also a lot of people can't get to the point, I mean, are you really going to listen to 15 minutes when they talk you through it's like, I think you need something quick, to review someone quickly. And then if you're interested, then might be a good idea to, but most clients that I work with who had video interviews, I think the CV was already reviewed, and then they send them a video questions. I think that makes a lot more sense, because we already know the company is interested in their CV. So then you can really invest in creating the best interview answers. But yeah.
Awesome. All right. We have many questions. So Erica Dalton is asking, do you have any tips for succeeding at the interviews for junior consulting positions? Would video resume help to stand out of the overall application pool? Well, I think we would focus on the first part of the question, right?
I mean, but just, can video help you stand out? I think yes, because, in consulting, I've worked in consulting for a year, mind you, but we were always looking for people who are very polished. Like, of course, you need to have the technical skills, but you needed to be very client facing, very consultative, and be like really polished and have really great communication skills. And I've taken part in some assessment days for graduates who are applying for graduate programs in consulting. And, it was interesting, because you can sometimes really tell, like, some people had like really presence. They were only like 20 something, but, early 20s, but they were like, wow, and to see someone like that on video, I think that would really help if you have that like really great communication skills and really good charisma. But how do you prepare for junior consulting interviews? You prepare in exactly the same way that I was describing today, because I have worked with many people who got into, say, Big Four or, IT consulting firms. And yes, there is a technical component, which obviously we didn't cover today, because I'm not able to tell you how, how to answer technical questions. But a lot of these companies would be using competency-based questions, because as a junior consultant or as a junior candidate, you don't have enough experience to share all of these different achievements, right? From your project, because you haven't worked on any projects, you probably just had some kind of work experience. So that's why it's so important that these interviews, typically, what do they ask you? Examples of achievements, examples of teamwork, examples of leadership, examples of taking initiative. Start from at exactly what we were covering today, and you can still quantify your achievements. So the principles are exactly the same. Your examples will be at a more junior level, but you still need to be able to quantify your experience. You still want to be able to provide, some learnings of different projects. You still want to show some self-awareness, and you still want to be able to explain your actions, not just what we did, but what I did, and then what was the result. So honestly, the principles are exactly the same. And I would also say, like, really good company research. And I know I didn't go into that in detail, but check my video on YouTube, how to research, or email me, I'll send you that video, how to research the company, because I provide a lot more detail, like, I think the interesting thing when I was interviewing junior consultants, actually, or the candidates for the like junior consulting positions, a lot of them haven't done enough company research. They've just looked at the website, but they were like, okay, you haven't really, you're not really impressing me here. Whereas the ones who have really done the research, who knew the projects, who knew how our clients were, who knew the financial results, these were the ones who really stood out. So, like, ask yourself, how can I make myself stand out? How can I do more research than other candidates potentially?
Well, speaking of that, we have our next participant asking a great question. So, Margaret, basically, it's not only that companies choose candidates, right? Sometimes candidates, they choose the company as well, right? So here's the question. There are different types of hiring strategies. Some have an interview and hire, and after that, some companies have several stages. So do you think the choice of the hiring funnel tells anything about the company?
You mean how they hire, right?
Yeah, the way they hire.
Well, yes, I do think, but I don't think it's always obvious, right? Because okay, so as an example, the company I'm recruiting for right now, they take hiring very seriously, and they have probably 5 stages for each interview. It doesn't mean you have 5 separate interviews. Some of them on the same day, some of them include a case study, but only because they really care. They have fantastic culture. Many people stay there. They have really good. They want to retain people as well. So that's why I think it shows they're taking hiring seriously. However, there are also companies that have, I've seen a guy once had like 11 interviews. To me, it just shows they don't know what they want, because I'm sorry, you shouldn't need 11 interviews to qualify a candidate. So I think, yes, it does tell you something about the company, because, most companies will have about 3 interviews. I think, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, but, I think 1 person, I don't think it's enough. I think you should always have, and also I would want to meet colleagues I'll be working with, so A lot of companies will have 2 or 3 interviews. That's fine. I think for some of the more senior roles or more technical positions, you will have maybe more. But then honestly, I have seen companies. I had this one company, I'm not going to mention the name. They're actually quite well known in the AI space. And my client who got the job there, I'm not even sure, like, he was already amazing, you know, but he just needed help with the competency-based questions. He got the job. It was actually an internship, but he was already quite experienced. It was a 6-figure internship, right? That's how much they pay. So they take hiring seriously, but he had like 17 interviews. It's something completely insane.
That is insane.
Yeah, the company is like really well known in the industry. So yeah.
Well, that's actually crazy. Just an off-top information. So there was this one candidate for Disney, EMEA region. So Disney was seeking for managing director for this region. So the lady, she flew to the United States and she actually got 60 interviews in 1 week. She was going crazy, but that's something she shared with us when we were at the university. She came as a visiting speaker. So yeah, 17 interviews is actually crazy, but I've heard of this one story where she had 60. All right, the last question, and it's actually time to finish the session. So how to handle an interview if you're changing your work field? Oh, that's a good one. What to expect during an interview?
Sure. So, I mean, firstly, if you have received if you already have been invited to an interview, it means that clearly you've done something right with your CV, right? You show that you have transferable skills. So apart from the usual prep we have just discussed, you need to be able to show how much you actually really how serious you are about this change, right? So I think you have to be super well prepared about the specific industry you're moving into, the role, like really do the research. Even like, let's say you haven't worked in the industry, you haven't done a specific role, but I mean, obviously you must have done something relevant because otherwise you wouldn't have got the interview. But I'll do a lot more research, speak to people in the industry, speak to people doing the same job, speak to people who work in the industry, read all the trade press you can, you know, watch videos. Like, you really want to be even more clued up than any other candidate already working in the industry because you have more to prove. And you need to be able to show that, you know, you are a safer, like a candidate who already has experience in a specific industry is a safer bet. So to persuade someone to give you a chance, you really need to show them you want it, but also that you're prepared to put in the effort, you know, and that's why I think the research will definitely help. So, but, you know, I think the whole fact you got an interview, it means it's a good sign. But yeah, I think, you know, even if you don't have specific examples that are relevant to that industry, I would still pick the star examples that will be relevant, that will be transferable to another industry. And yeah, just do a lot more research. I would read some industry reports. I would read about the trends. Like, you really want to know everything.
Great point. That's actually great. Well, okay, it is really, really, really time to close up the session. Margaret, we cannot be more grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure. And, you know, anyone on the call, like, I know it was, you know, because obviously we agreed on half an hour, but this stuff that really could be a half a day workshop or at least an hour, you know, to go into more detail. So if anyone, you know, if you didn't feel your question was answered, you know, don't ask me about the AI stuff. That's really not my area of expertise, you know, ask Annie. But anything related to interviews, to job search, feel free to send me an email, you know, I will respond. So yeah, any specific question, I can, you know, direct you to some resources I have as well. As I have a lot of free resources. So anything specific you need help on, whether it's salary negotiation or whatever, yeah.
Thank you so much. And yes, guys, please save Margaret's contacts. Here they are on the screen so that you can contact her afterwards. And in case of a need to watch this again, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So please check it out. And if you have questions, Margaret is always ready. I am always ready too. So again, Margaret,